Welcome back, friends, to League Unlocked. My name is Eric. As the power rankings continue, we're shifting over to the land of the LEC, or Europe, as you're probably also equally as familiar with. G2 had another, I don't want to say fantastic week, because they struggled against Excel Esports. It was a little bit of disrespect, no doubt, but they still stayed perfect on the split. They moved to 4-0, and when you're still perfect and the only remaining team that hasn't lost yet, of course you're going to come in at number 1 on our power rankings. They bounced back after that XL game and looked pretty solid in their second matchup, so pretty hard to argue against G2 coming in at that number 1 spot. Number 2, Vitality comes in with the biggest climb of the week. They're up 4 spots from week 1 after a 2-0 week against, what you would say coming into something like week 2 would be the hardest possible matchups, or one of the hardest, against Misfits and Fnatic. They come away with a clean 2-0 week, and they looked rock solid in both of those. In their loss to Schalke in week 1, they looked completely lost in the macro game, but they were just dancing around trying to force Barons when they didn't even have any vision in those matchups. But in these ones, against Fnatic and Misfits, they got early leads and really maybe a few lost team fights that didn't go their way, but for the most part, they were fully in control. Jizuke on Irelia was something to behold, and Cabochard, he was one of our top 5 players. He was the best top laner in EU from week 2, in our opinion. The Jace and the Urgot, he was absolutely fantastic on those picks, and Vitality, Mowgli also stood out and looked a lot better than he did in week 1. But the main question with Vitality is what happens when they don't have that early lead. It's the exact same things that we talked about in 2018. When they fall behind, are they able to get back into the game, kind of, make some risky plays that don't just make them completely lose the game when they're already at a goal deficit? Didn't really have to see that there in week 2, but you saw the potential for this squad and just how quickly and how efficiently they can snowball some of these leads. Misfits were looking like 1A and 1B with G2, but Vitality definitely took them down a peg in their matchup, and that's why Misfits comes in at that 3rd spot. They still look like a fantastic team, and they're sitting at 3-1. Well, I don't think one loss is enough to take them out of the top 3 just yet, because they've looked so dominant in their 3 wins. So they round out the top 3, and Schalke moves up a spot to number 4. They also went 2-0. They had a slightly easier schedule than Vitality, but still, Fnatic is Fnatic, even though they still have yet to get a win, and they went up against SK, who were actually one of the surprise teams of week 1, and SK looked all right in week 2, but Schalke, that bottom lane for them, playing around upset, they were completely popping off with him and Ignar. So I'd be excited for Schalke, and I think this is a legit team that can make playoffs and maybe even get as high as top 3. Splice, also in the top 5, they had a 2-0 week. Slightly easier schedule than the likes of Vitality and Schalke. That's why they're behind them, but they look decent, and they're finally stopping with the wait for late game and let Kabe carry those games, because that's not what the meta is right now. Splice, SK into the top 6. They're actually down from what we saw in week 1 because they got 2 wins against Fnatic in week 1, basically. So that's why they were so high there. They went 1-1 this week. Their only win was against Excel, who actually put up a decent showing against G2, so they're not as big a walkover as, people probably initially thought heading into this season. Excel look a little more decent than we thought, and SK comes in at number 6 with a win against them. Top 7, you've got the likes of Origin. Now, here's the thing with Origin. They went 0-2 this week, but they, so far, have probably had the toughest schedule out of any team so far. So that's why they're 1-3. I still think they're better than that record will show. They'll still be fighting for a playoff spot. They've had some tough games to start. They've looked decent in some of them, but they have had some really underwhelming or overwhelming losses, whatever you want to say. They haven't looked great in them. That's why they have the biggest fall of the week, going 0-2, because everyone else above them or close to them had really solid weeks. But the bottom 3 stays the exact same as last week, which is pretty shocking to me. Excel in at 1-3, ahead of the likes of Fnatic, who are 0 and 4.5. Basically, again, that's going to be the meme all split about that SK game. But Fnatic remains the biggest question mark on this power ranking. I mean, they don't have a win. They have to be bottom 2, tied with Rogue. And there's so many things going wrong with Fnatic right now. The blame should not be on Nemesis. Nemesis was the best performing player from Fnatic this week. He had some big plays on that Galio. I know, again, he was way behind in CS. That's something he's got to work on in the laning phase. But outside of the laning, he was great for the whole week. It's the likes of Broxa, Reckless, and I mean, even Whippo and Hylissang, pretty much everyone else, the staple guys that were all there at the World Finals who are struggling. Reckless dying 8 times on his Sivir, some disrespectful spell shields, and just pushing when he doesn't need to. So even when they were, I mean, excuse me, this game got way out of hand with Upset getting 7 kills by 10 minutes or something on the Kai'Sa. Nemesis almost brought it back with the Cassiopeia, which is what I mean. He was the only bright spot for Fnatic this week, but they need their veterans to really get back on track, and I'm still not going to panic yet for Fnatic. But their first match in week 3 is against Rogue. If they fall to 0-5, then they're playing Misfits after that. You got to start winning soon, Fnatic. I'm predicting this is going to be the last time that we find Fnatic in the bottom 2 of our power rankings for the entirety of the spring split. But if they drop a game to Rogue, even if they go 1-1 this week, maybe they'll still be around that bottom 3. But they got a lot of work cut out of them to get back to that playoff hunt, because you just saw Splice, Shulka, and Vitality all go 2-0 this week, and in pretty convincing fashion for all 3 of them. They look like legit playoff teams and legit contenders to vie for that top 3 spot, because with Fnatic sitting in the bottom of the barrel right now, it's G2 and Misfits who are kind of in the driver's seat for that top 3, but there's got to be someone else to fit in there. And we know with the changes to the playoff format for the LEC, which we'll get deeper into later on in the split, but getting top 2 is key. 3 to 6 is pretty similar. It's about those top 2 spots, and Fnatic, if they want to get there, they got to turn this car around real quick. Luckily, they have Youngbuck to do that, but it should all get started with Rogue in week 3. But for now, Fnatic is down at number 9, just a little bit ahead of Rogue.